Like Greg's finishing his supper.
He's laughing.
Okay, go on.
It's been one of those days.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Plaistow Board of Selectmen meeting for October 26th, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. And Beth, may I have a roll call, please?
Select Chair, Ms. Hart.
Here.
Select Vice Chair, Mr. Talion.
Here.
Selectman Mr. Kishka.
I believe he's going to be late, so I'm going to hold him absent until he comes in. I think I might hear him, but we can move on.
Okay, Selectman Mr. Blinn.
Here.
And for the record, he is joining us remotely. Selectman Mr. DeRoche.
Here.
And also joining us remotely is Mark Pearson, Town Manager. Mr. Colby, Assistant Town Manager. We have DeVos, Planning Assistant. We also have Keith Pratt and Gene Forbes from Underwood Engineering.
Awesome.
All right, and I believe I hear Julian tromping up the stairs right now, so you can mark him.
There he is.
And would everybody kindly rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So I'm going to go a little bit out of order on the agenda tonight so that we can open up our public hearing on a timely basis. And also for the folks who are listening out here tonight, because we have a selectman missing, he's being remotely participating, we're going to have roll call votes for all motions. So I'd like to open up the public hearing at 6:32 p.m. And this public hearing is to consider a victim witness advocate grant in the amount of $30,000. And Mark, if you wouldn't mind kind of jumping in and just briefly explaining what that's about, please, for the public.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. For a number of years, the Plaistow Police Department has had a position, victim advocate, and it's an integral part of the police department to have this position to keep lines of communication open with victims and witnesses as it relates to the investigation and prosecution of criminal activity. And this is an annual grant that is applied for and is awarded, and it supplements the position at the police department. And for the record, although that we don't have to offer this victim witness advocate to other surrounding towns, we do. So this person who's been in this position since 2017, possibly the end of 16, she was hired just before my arrival. She does a great job, and she helps the prosecution, and she really ties together all of the victims and the witnesses for prosecution, and does a great job. So this is an annual event where we have to apply for and receive this grant funding in the amount of $30,000 that is a substantial offset to her salary and benefits at the police department, and it's a very valuable position to have in the Plaistow Police Department.
Thank you, sir. Board, do you have any questions for Mark on this? I'd like to offer this out to the public to find out if any of the public may have any questions or comments. If you do, I believe there's a number on the screen that you can call us and express your opinion, so I'll wait a couple of minutes or so. But if no one has any comments or questions, I'd like to have the motion put on the floor. I believe you have it written.
I'll make a motion to accept $30,000 victim witness advocate grant and to enter into a grant agreement with the New Hampshire Department of Justice. I further authorize Town Manager Mark A. Pearson and/or Plaistow Police Chief Douglas P. Mullen to execute any and all documents which may be necessary for this contract.
Second the motion.
All righty. So is there any further discussion on this motion? So seeing none and not hearing any from the public, I'm going to take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 We have to do roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. Beth, thanks for reminding me. All right.
Ms. Hart.
Aye.
Mr. Talion.
Aye.
Mr. Kishka.
Here. Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
All right, okay. So that motion carries 500. I'm going to end the public hearing at 6:35 PM. And then I'd like to go into approval of meeting minutes for October 19th, if we could. We have two sets of minutes, one from October 19th and one from the Potable Water meeting, so let's
So
do
I'll make a motion that we approve the October 19th, 2020 Plaistow Board of Selectmen minutes.
Okay. You have a second on that, please.
I'll second it.
Second motion?
All right. John can second the motion, give him a break, okay? So are there any comments, suggestions, corrections, anything on this that need to be changed before we take a vote? Okay, so roll call vote, please, Beth?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries 500. Thank you.
So I make a motion that we
right.
approve the Potable Water meeting, August 31st, 2020.
You have a second on that, please?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Any comments or discussion on that at this point? Okay, so seeing none, may I have a roll call vote, please, Beth?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, that motion also carries 500. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, next on our agenda is public comment. We have received an email from Mr. Jim Peck, 206 Oak Ridge Road, and I'm going to read that email to you right now. Recently, the board voted to pursue a waste disposal contract excluding recycling based on cost and the stated fact that only 17% recycle in town. I am concerned that the BOS has not sought any public input on this decision, given the significant impact on every household in town. The town has provided curbside recycling since the 1990s, and it has become a way of life for our citizens. To abruptly stop recycling after so many years without public input and discussion is not open government, in my opinion. While I fully understand the economics of recycling that has significantly changed in the past few years, with China no longer accepting much and the market for recycled items depressed, I think it's our duty to find a way to protect the environment and continue recycling. Personally, I've always recycled each and everything possible, and my trash never amounts to more than half a barrel. My recycling average is about a 64-gallon barrel every 2 weeks. I did a drive-by in my neighborhood on Recycle Day, and 90% had recycling. I also drove around town and saw about 75% with recycling, so I'm puzzled by the 17% figure quoted recently. To gauge town opinion, I recently posted a poll on Facebook, and the results are as follows. Should the selectmen find a way to provide recycling even if it costs more? Yes, find a way to continue curbside recycling, 127 people. Yes, find a way to provide drop-off recycling locations, 21 people. Put it to a vote of taxpayers in a warrant, 18 people. No, I'm not willing to pay for more for recycling, 5 people. And we need to know how much in order to make an informed decision, 1 person. So as you can see, an overwhelming majority want some way to continue recycling, even if it costs more. The people of the town must have some say in this decision, and I believe they are willing to pay for it. I certainly am. I respectfully request a public hearing on this matter to get public input and to discuss potential solutions, be it adding back to the budget, putting it on a warrant, providing a drop-off point, or limiting it to only selected items such as paper and cardboard, which make up the bulk of it. Thank you for your consideration. So I would just like to answer Mr. Peck, and I'll give each board member an opportunity to do so also. One of the main responsibilities of the Select Board is to provide the best services possible for our town for the majority of our taxpayers. And we're also here to do that at the best price possible. And believe me, that is not an easy thing to do. I know our citizens are very conscientious. They take a great deal of pride in ownership, and I know they're also very good about stewarding the environment. But unfortunately, when it comes to recycling, we really don't do a very good job of it. Mr. Peck asked where the 17% came from. I have with me here, and I know you can't see it at home, but I have the trash and recycling statistics that JRM provides us on a monthly basis for 2020, and it goes through July. And it has the commingled tonnage, which is our recycled tonnage, our trash tonnage, the totals, and it also talks about recycling contamination. So up until July, the trash totaled 2,465 tons of trash and recycling. Out of that, only 424 tons was recycled. If you divide the numbers, it comes out to 17%. So 17% of our total trash pickup is recycling. Now, on the other side of the thing, it says 35% of the recycling is contaminated. Now, I originally thought it was 30%, but I guess it's not, it's 35. So when you take about a third of that...
Can you explain what contaminated means?
I'm going to do that in a second.
Okay.
When you take a third of the 17%, you're bringing it down to about 11% of all of our trash is being recycled. That's a terrible, terrible number. When they say that it's contaminated, what they mean is if you don't properly rinse out your containers, your glasses, your cans, your bottles, or if there's something in your recycling barrel that's not supposed to be there, like a trash bag or, you know, some of those little styrofoam things, they're going to throw the whole barrel in the trash. And so while you can drive around and you can look at all of these recycling barrels, if you don't look in them carefully enough, those people that pick up the trash make a decision that if that recycling barrel's dirty, it goes in the trash. And I think that's part of the reason that we have such a low recycling rate. Most other towns are in the high 20s and low 30s for that. So it is not financially prudent for this town to engage in services that are not cost effective. We pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for this recycling every year. And I want to point out to you that our fire department budget is less than our trash budget this year. That is something seriously wrong when we're paying more for trash than we are for firefighters, in my humble opinion. So I do want to let Mr. Peck know that, yes, we are working on alternatives, and we're going to discuss that at the last piece of our agenda where it says trash discussion. So stay tuned, and we will be discussing 4 alternatives for the people to discuss and to think about. So, you know, if any of the other selectmen would like to make a comment, I'll let you each make a 2-minute comment, and then we'll
I
move
thought we were going
on.
to talk about it later.
Oh, you want to talk about it
Well,
later?
you said
Okay,
we were
you
going to
can.
talk about it later.
You can.
Are we doing it twice or once?
No, we have to talk about the the trash protocols that I found out that we can look at for recycling. There's 4 different things that we can do for recycling, and that was going to be part of our discussion. I want to do it now because it's public comment.
All right, I'll speak first.
Go ahead.
Now, I'm a little taken back that someone would think that we're not doing anything, because that's not true. I've been talking to people, I've talked to citizens on the phone, I've gotten emails, explanations have gone back and forth, and ideas. I find out it's an extra $120,000 to $200,000 a year more to do recycling. Yet that, if you equate that to an average household, that's about, or any to their budget, it's about 1.2% to 2% of the budget. A normal household, that could be anywhere from $120 to $200 a month. Not a month, but per year on your tax bill. We've also been looking at, I know Francine's been talking to some of the companies, that we know, I'm a recycler, so I'm not a person that's against recycling. I've recycled pretty much most of my life. I didn't even get the option to do that when I lived in another town because they didn't have it at all. And I'm one of those people like Mr. Peck. I might put 1 barrel of actual trash per month, and the rest is pretty much all recycle. Maybe it's because of habits, what you buy, whatever, but everything comes in containers and most of it's recyclable. And I do know that I've taken stuff out of my recycle that didn't belong there because my other person in the household somehow put them in there.
You have the same other person I do, yes,
And
I know.
since I bring it out from in the house and outside, I catch it. But I know that's not going to happen everywhere. So I understand that it happens even to the best people who promote recycling. We are looking at other options. One is, a lot of people say, I'm willing to pay the extra. Well, we're looking at options too.
Yep.
If this is not a final decision yet, if it comes out we don't have recycling for everybody, which everybody pays the extra $120 to $200 a year, is we'll allow those people that want it to arrange for them at their households for about that amount, which it comes out to be, which some of the figures Francine's given me, is they have the option. I know the people that pay for it will do it right.
Yep.
And the recycle they put in will go and recycle.
So you want to wrap that up so we can let others
Yes,
comment?
and if you do notice something that Francine just said, some reason, other towns are in the high 20s and 30% of recycle rates, because the company that gave us those figures is not just from this town. They do other towns too. So we're far below that. We've talked about it in the past. We've tried to educate people. We even had a trash committee, and it just wasn't successful for whatever reason. So I understand what's going on. We're trying to maybe do drop-off points. People can
And we can
do
discuss that
recycling if they
after.
want to, and the
We
people
can
that choose
discuss
to
that
do
after.
it will actually do it.
Yeah.
And they'll do it right.
Because I think
So-
all of us here recycle, and all of us are
Right.
probably going to do that. But we have to think of all the people in town, not just 127 people. We have to think about everybody. But would either one of you
Yeah.
like to make a
Sure.
comment? Go ahead.
I would.
Greg.
So as mentioned, all of the selectmen recycle religiously. So it's not that we are against recycling. There appears to be some education that needs to be provided so that all of our taxpayers have a better understanding about what is recycle and what's not recycle. And our chair just explained some of this in terms of the kinds of items, like just putting a pizza box inside of your recyclable voids out all the effort that you had to separate it. So I think some education would help. The other thing is that we are looking at what's happening today, and our contract does not expire until June 30th. So that means that if there are organizations or people interested in getting the word out about recycling, we can watch that recycle rate climb. And from what I understand, it's about a 30% participation just to break even. So if we could get something at 30% or higher, we could actually make that part of our solid waste disposal or removal contract. If indeed what we are currently planning to do for a recycle, if none of those work, which I hope one will, we also have the ability of going back to recycle if things change. So if the rate increases, or if the amount of money that we can get if new sources start collecting recyclable material and the price goes up, we can always renegotiate a contract for the second year being recycled. And we are also making plans that when we provide containers for the new contract, we're making plans to have one of those, if necessary, have its cover replaced so it's a different color, and then we would be able to use that in the future years for a recyclable bin. So I think we are looking at this. We're trying to look at dollars and cents. All of us heard very clearly when we got elected that we want the budget to be reasonable for the services that we are providing. And I think if you stay tuned, you'll understand that we have done a lot of research about recycle, and that will come out in the end of the meeting.
All right, thanks. Jay, did you want to make a comment at all, or?
My only comment to this is I would like us to find some type of solution, and that's what is being done.
And that's what we're going to discuss tonight. There's
Right.
4 different options.
I would like
so,
to see
yeah.
some type of solution. I
Okay.
really like to stick with curbside, but I know it's not feasible, economic, and, the majority of the board has gone that way. So hopefully we can find some type of solution here. The other thing that concerns me is there hasn't been a lot of education in the last few years, as far as I'm concerned. And maybe that's something we can do in the coming months to try to get people moving in the right direction. The other thing is the JRM says every month it's 35%. It's 35% every month. How can that be possible that we're that consistent with how much of our recycling material is getting thrown into the trash? I'd like to find out from JRM what constitutes something, so is it, a plastic bag gets put in, so they come to my house, they dump the recycling in the recycling, and if my neighbor puts a plastic bag in there, I'm just using them as an example, no, whatever. When they get to the recycling facility, because that bag is in there, they're gonna dump the whole load, because they don't actually leave the barrel to be picked up by the trash, from what I can see. So they're actually dumping it in, and then is it the whole load that gets put into the trash?
That I honestly don't know,
So
but
I
I do know
think-
that we're paying twice for it.
Right, and so I think we need to get some clarification from our existing,
To my understanding, the research that I did, there is a filtering process before that stuff is brought
Okay.
to the recycle. So whatever they find is, for example, dirty or whatever,
Right.
they're separating that. We are paying for that filtering process, then we're paying for the tipping fees to actually drive that back to the dump.
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, unless you are there, standing there at the
Yeah.
recycling center, you're not going to be, we have to trust our vendors, basically, is what it comes
I
down
just,
to.
every month it's
Yeah, I know,
35%.
I
It's
know.
just- I
The-
can't believe we're that consistent with how much
Yeah,
contaminated
the year
recycling
before,
we have.
the year before, we were different, we were high at 42, 38, 40, 42. So you have an excellent point, Jay, but this contract is up in 8 more months.
Yeah.
So we will be dealing with a different vendor. John, I'm going to ask you if you have a comment, and then I believe there's someone else here for public comment. So, John, did you have a comment that you'd like to make at all?
Yes, I would like to, I agree with Jay. I think maybe a lot of the public doesn't realize what they can and can't put in there, and that these bottles and things have to be clean. And if we put a dumpster up at the dump and people put dirty recycling, in there, what will that do when they haul it away? But I would have no problem with curbside if everybody did, knew exactly what they took. It
Well,
just
hopefully-
seems like a waste of time for people to put dirty cans and pizza boxes in recycling.
Yeah. And there's also a number of condo associations in large areas that do not do any recycling. I personally wrote to 13 condo associations last year to ask them if they would recycle, and not one of them responded to me except for West Pine. So we also have to do a lot of outreach, and hopefully our new vendor will be able to help us with education and outreach. But, Mr. Anthony, do you have a comment for public comment, or are you just, all right, come on up and give us your name and your address, please.
My name is Richard Anthony, 4 Village Way, Plaistow. I'm basically going to just read the email that I sent to the Board of Selectmen last meeting, because I believe last meeting it was acknowledged that an email was received, and,
Yes.
just for the sake of reading it, I would like to have it just read
We've
so
received
people
more
can
than
hear.
one, so I have.
All right. And I know what, I believe, Mr. DeRoche, you responded, I think, saying
And I
that-
believe I responded to you as well.
Okay. All right, so I'm just going to read what I sent, just
Sure.
so that's on the record.
Go ahead.
All right, so. All right, I watched the BOS meeting where the topic of recycling was discussed. It is the 21st century. The question of whether or not we should recycle or not is a settled cultural question. We are now at the implementation part of that priority. That implementation portion of that priority is on our elected representatives. I believe it's nothing short of an epic fail if you can't deliver on something that speaks to this priority, or rather addresses the priority in a manner that doesn't simply result in reversing 50 years of education and progress. You need to have an alternative solution to throwing recyclables in the general garbage stream. The meeting where it was discussed, where the recycle issue I felt was a bit on the disgraceful side, in that it lacked due diligence. All right, I encourage people to be creative. If after doing real due diligence, it becomes a cost issue, which from the meeting, there was really nothing tangible that could be determined. Some spreadsheets, no idea what was being charged, dubious participation rates, a veiled threat about assessments going up, the need to save money or else property owners won't be able to live in Plaistow, in my opinion, was not adequate. Couple bullet points just off the top of my head. put a series of dumpsters on town property, charge an annual fee to offset hauling costs, and put controls to limit random dumping. I would encourage people to talk to our police department if we need to discourage type of our random dumping. Have company representatives come and publicly discuss the fee structure. If cost is a function of participation, then put it to the voters and make it mandatory if that's what the public wants. I would say the BOS is not in the business of evaluating the state of the secondary recyclable market. I personally thought that was a red herring. JRM or some other vendor makes that business assessment. Plaistow is merely looking for a vendor to take our recyclables, not make an assessment on the economic viability of selling those recyclables to China or some other entity. Public comment on the issue of this magnitude is essential. It is the opposite of local rule and transparency that the public voice is ignored because you think a particular constituency might not come to the meeting or might show up to the meeting. I think a lot of the so-called concerns that that have been put forward by the town officials, employees, could be cleared up if there was a ride-along. All right, if we, I know that Haverhill implemented something like that where they literally, I think, followed around the recyclable people to discourage sort of dumping and things like that. But I believe that nothing that night was provided that gave any reassurance of anything like that was being done. The exact opposite seemed to be happening, and it just seemed that we were just moving forward to just sort of say that it was a function of cost and things like that. And I would just like to point out that Plaistow has a bit of a checkered history when it comes to the environment, and this would be not exactly a shining moment if we were to just say, dump the garbage into the recycle stream. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, so if there's no other person here to comment about, I'm going to save you for the end of the discussion. I'd like to move on to the next agenda item, which is the water budget presentation, and I believe Keith Pratt is going to be presenting us this water department budget from Underwood Engineering. So Keith and/or Gene Forbes, I could like to turn this over to you so you can give us a brief explanation on what we're looking at here. Hopefully they're here.
No, thank you. This is Keith. Mark or Gene, did you have anything to start with, or you want me to jump right in?
To jump in, Keith, thank you.
We have a suggested budget, and we wanted to show a little bit of a presentation here of about 20 slides just to sort of refresh where we're at with rates and the start of this water department. So if it's okay, I'll share my screen and just run through those about 5 or 10 minutes and then discuss the budget and see if there's any other questions.
Okay, before you do that, I think Julian had a question, or Julian, you want to save it till the budget is discussed, or?
Well, that's a clarification for this budget. This is not a normal budget that will go to the budget committee. Yes, no?
Yes.
It still goes to the budget committee.
Yes.
So this is the water department budget for the normal taxpayers' budget, or not?
The taxpayers do not pay for this budget.
Well, then your previous answer was incorrect. This is not the
It
one
is not a taxpayer's budget,
Exactly.
but the budget committee gets to vote on this.
Yeah. But, and that's what I was going to share. This is not a budget that is taxpayer funded. It's
Correct.
water funded.
Correct.
Just before we go into any huge discussions on it, and the public should be aware of that.
And I'm sure we'll keep telling the public that too, so. All right, so go ahead, Keith. Sorry.
Okay. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Yes.
And it is important, you do have a water department budget already through your fire suppression system, but this is an update to that so that we're establishing the additional funds to support the rest of the potable system. And this is all designed, as you just discussed, to be user rate funded. There's no general fund funds here. So we'll talk about the water service connections in the department budget here. I'm going to refresh on the rates that were set, talk about the budget. We want to talk about incentives because getting connections has a lot to do with how this budget is being set. Talk a little bit about what you're collecting for fire system charges and revenues, because those do impact the revenue stream as well. And then we'll just close on the contract operations. There are 83, these are your potential users. There's 83 MTBE sites. I think that's the latest count as the state updates things. It's important to point out there's a lot of other potential connections out there too. We guess about 337 properties that front the existing fire suppression and the new water lines. That's important because I think we want to work to incentivize these as many people as possible to connect to the system to support the budget. Remembering too that the rate structure that's set up is the top two are one-time fees. They're the fees to enter into the system, whether it's administration fee, application fee, or connection fee. There's also the development charges, the system development charges to cover the equity and the assets of the system. Both those are one-time charges. And then the rest of the charges are the quarterly charge rates that we've set for consumption and meter charges, as well as your current fire suppressant charges. The approved rates, I can't remember when it was, maybe June or July, I think, if I recall right, that were voted on the board. This is just a restatement of those, but the budget and the revenues that we're establishing are based on the rates that were set. Consumption charges of 5.24 per 100 cubic feet, and a quarterly meter charge for a 3/4 inch meter of $63. That charge is a little higher as the meter size increases shown here, but you've seen this. Also, you've seen the system development charges. These are the one-time charges to enter into the system. There's three. There's the MSDC charge, which is the source charge established by the originator of the water, and that is Manchester Waterworks, and the charge associated to Plaistow for that. And then there's the existing assets and fire suppression system development charges that are also part of the rate structure. Now shown here. Recalling too, when we set the rates originally, we were targeting a rate of $630 a year for a typical user. We expect that to rate, vary greatly depending on what people consume, but typically we would see $600 to $650 a year. $600 to maybe $750 a year for typical users, residential that is. Commercials obviously would be higher as they use more water and have larger meters. But I want to remind that was the target. When we did that back in January, we knew based on those rates how much our budget would be based on the amount of water we sold. And this chart, if you recall, started at 20,000 gallons a day. If we had 20,000 gallons a day of users, and if we had 80,000 gallons a day of users, we could afford a budget anywhere from $200,000 to $420,000 a year. And that established, once you subtract the wholesale charges to buy the water, that established how much money we could support to run the department. Which is same table is summarized here. It varies between a $200,000 and a $420,000 budget. So that's what we did back in January and July. What we've now done, I'm not going to go through this. I'm showing it to you because it's in your packet. But this is a budget that was established by the town for the water department, or the existing fire suppression, which was closer to 157 for 2020. It's being projected to be 188,000 for 2021. We added in red, and you can study this on what we added to finish out the budget for the department, including contract operations. And we are targeting a budget for the water department that includes everything to be at 430,000, which allows a contract operator budget of about 150 to 200,000. And that is based on, we're basically assuming that we're going to target 80,000. That allows us, I should say, to target 80,000 gallons a day of users. Okay, so that budget supports 80,000. Now, obviously, if you only got 60,000 gallons a day of users or less users, all of that budget would not be needed. But our thought was we want to support the potential for an 80,000 gallon a day first full year. So that's what we based the budget on. And because we're trying to encourage folks to connect, and we've talked in the past about incentives, we've talked about incentives three ways. One was waiving some of the fees if there was if people connected in the first year, or if they were the first ones to connect, we would waive either part or all of the SDC or connection fees or MSDCs. The other incentive was we will be going out to competitive bidding for a significant amount of service work because this is a significant project, so that the town could consider offering the use, and probably would offer the use of the town's contractor and take advantage of the pricing. And then the other incentive that that might be new to you tonight is that we've been looking at low or 0% loans for folks who want to connect but see a large dollar to be part of, to construct the service line, pay the connection fees and the SDCs. So the town could develop a loan program to front the money and then pay it, have the users pay it back through their rates. So I'm going to talk about that. Well, first, I'm going to just remind you on the connection incentives. I think this was something we did back in January that talked about how we might waive some of the SDCs and connection fees for residential and commercial. So that chart is the same chart we've seen before. But here's how the low or 0% interest loan might work. And this, by the way, is structured similarly to some projects we've done in other communities, Rochester most recently. The town would borrow some money up front or have access to some cash, either through a loan or reserves. And then the property owners who want to take advantage of the program would enter into an agreement with the town. And then the town contractor, through the bidding of the work that we're going to be doing through P4, would facilitate the work. And then the property owner is assessed a quarterly bill for 5 or maybe even 10 years, depending on the cost. So let me walk you through how that works.
Keith, can I interrupt you?
If I was a resident, or there was a resident on the system that wanted to connect, and here's an example of what that might cost, include construction and fees of $10,000. And that's the service line, well decommissioning, the meter installs, that's everything, including restoration of their property. Could vary, could be less, it could be more, but I used this as an example. Let's say we had 40 participants who wanted to take advantage of the program. The town would need to have access to up to a little over $400,000 to be able to front that money. Mm-hmm. Now, if the town borrowed that money at a 5-year loan, there would be $84,000 of annual payments that the town would have due. Total payments of about $422,000, and the interest on those payments is $16,000. Each property owner would be paying back that upfront cost of $10,000, and if it was a 5-year loan, they would be assessed quarterly payments of $500. All 40 of those participants would generate a revenue of $400,000, which nearly offsets the $422,000 payment. So this is a program where the town would be borrowing money at 1%, but offering it to the residents at 0%. So essentially the town's at risk for the interest costs only. If that same person chose a 10-year payback schedule, those quarterly payments would be about $254. If the town borrowed that same money at 10 years, then they'd be the risk would be about $27,000 of interest payments over 10 years. So it's a small cost to the department, $1,000 or $2,000, maybe $3,000 a year in interest to promote and encourage people to be able to take advantage of that program. It's based on a similar approach we just did in Rochester. We've attached the actual documents that were used in Rochester. That project was just finished up this year. We might suggest, to take advantage of it the way we've laid it out. It would be really offered to the people who want to connect the first year only if we're going to be using the town contract or taking advantage of the town bids. Mm-hmm. Rochester did require a lien on there, so there was a lien on the property. It wasn't necessarily popular, but it did protect the town.
Yeah.
Rochester established a $5,000 threshold where and this could be up to you, but where if it was $5,000 or more, that the owner could go to a 10-year scheduled payback. They would only allow a 5-year scheduled payback if it was less than $5,000. and then maybe we would consider that to be residential only. There is a sheet also in your handout that compares there's three types of users here. This is all residential. This is something you can study, but it allows you to answer the question if somebody says, what is it going to cost me to connect and what is it going to cost me to be getting water year after year? And so there's an MTBE user here. Of course, everything that costs up front is being covered. And then they would have annual rates of about $630 a year. Like we said, we've been targeting, and they'd have no connection fees. A non-MTBE user is the second column. If they take zero advantage of any of the programs that we're suggesting here, they'd have upfront costs of about $11,000. And then there would be no financing available to them. So that shows the same rate they would get, but they'd have those $11,000 charges up front. Again, that's an example, average. I think many are going to be less, some might be more. And then if that same user took advantage of the incentives, this third column compares what their charges would be because of some of the incentives that are being waived and how that 5 or 10 year payback would work. They would then take that $10,000 and get quarterly payments of $500 a quarter if it was a 5-year payback, or more likely a 10-year payback at $250. So that may take a little bit of study, but that's an attempt to try to establish what the different users would be assessed by example, whether they take advantage of the incentives or not. The last thing I wanted to touch on was you do also collect revenues from your fire suppression system. Current rates are about $120,000 a year in revenue, support about $120,000 a year in revenue. We use American Water Works Association guidance manuals. They suggest for a system the size of Plaistow that fire suppression represents about 35% of the operating costs. If we establish a budget of 430, fire suppression costs typically would be about 150. This would be another way to help with the revenue. This would suggest we could increase the fire suppression charges by 25%, 120 to 150. And that is based on industry practice with, there's a rate manual that the American Water Works Association puts out, and we use for guidance quite a bit. And really it's a chart. It's quite interesting. They basically ratio the amount of potable water and the amount of fire suppression capacity. They go up on the curve, move over, and you're 35%. Because you're a small system, your potable amount of the water is a lot less compared to the amount of fire suppression that's being offered. The last thing I had was just an update on the contract operations, and I don't know, Gene, if you want to speak to that real quick, but it is something we're trying to get into play real soon because the biggest variable in this budget is the contract operators' rates and fees. Gene, do you have anything to add to that? And then
point out that we're very close to providing to you a draft RFP that details the scope of work for an operator. I just haven't quite finished drafting it up. I should have it to you next week. And we are targeting the end of the year to go through a review process of proposals and interviews, and shortly after have a recommendation for a contract award.
Okay, so that was all I had, and want to certainly take on any questions you have. But again, I think what we were trying to do is promote. I got to stop sharing screens here, but promote a budget that would allow for us to serve up to 80,000 gallons a day of users, and that's why the budget was set where we proposed. So with that, I'll take questions and I'll stop sharing.
Could you cover the slide? It's on slide number 19, having to do with the percentage allocated for fire protection. What are you trying to say there? Is it 35% of the volume of water would be used for fire suppression or available?
Yeah, I mean, your budget prior was just a fire suppression budget. Your budget now is a combination of fire suppression and potable water budget. This chart allows you by the ratio of how much potable water and fire suppression exist in your system to establish that 35% establishes what typically would be the part of the budget that's associated with fire suppression.
Okay.
So the 35% times your budget would be typically what AWWA says could be assessed to the fire side charges.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so Keith and/or Jean, on page 12, connection incentives, I believe we discussed this several times, that we were reducing the first $40,000 gallon per day to 20,000, and I haven't seen it corrected anywhere, and I really want to emphasize that that does need to be corrected so we don't mislead any of our citizens who are planning on doing these connection incentives.
Yeah, yes, I apologize. We should have gotten that. I should have picked that up. That is correct. We've only approved at this point, or you've only approved at 20,000.
Okay.
And that slide did show 40.
All righty. So are you taking budget questions at this point, or any questions, or?
Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, so your budget is significantly different from the draft budget that we were given to work with. So how do you explain that?
I'm not sure which draft budget you're starting with.
We had a budget of $286,300. It was I don't know if you can see that or
So,
not.
yeah, so I know a lot of these numbers were estimates, and I know probably for the first 2/3 of the budget, you're in sync with what our town finance director is looking at. So I guess maybe we should be asking our finance director where are these discrepancies, what's the rationale for the discrepancies?
Madam Chair?
Yeah, yes, on page 10.
This is Mark Pearson.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes.
That's not really a.
I'd like to take a stab at it. It's not that it's a discrepancy, it's that Underwood engineers, Keith and Jean, have brought to our attention things that they've seen in other systems, and they are suggesting to bring our proposed budget higher in a couple areas. For instance, on waterline repairs, in our budget, we were suggesting $15,000, and they think that the waterline repair should be carried at $30,000. So there's one, not a discrepancy, it's just a philosophy that they bring in their experience to us. So in the red, I've got the page of theirs that's included in your package here for the additions are in red. So the 30,000 is a $15,000 increase. And substantially, the other increase that they're suggesting is in the water operator. And if you very simply just do some quick math, and the delta between our 288 and the 430 is the amount that they're allocating for the operator. And I've used this expression this week quite a few times. We're taking a dot and we're all going to throw it at the dartboard and try to figure out what the first budget should be. We've yet to actually receive any proposals from the operators, and we've yet to quantify when the operator would come on board, what particular month. And there's a variable there that we've talked about this week. And the variable is that within the larger contract of the grant, one of the components is the disinfection of the current system. And one of the proposals Gene and I specifically were talking about was to bring that proposed operator on next year in either the spring or the summer. And as part of their operations, or prior to them actually signing a contract, or maybe when they do sign a contract for the operations, hypothetically for, say, the last 4 months of the year, they would be eligible to be the contractor to do the disinfection of the system. And that would also be with sort of the blessing of the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And Gene can jump in to correct me because this is what he and I talked about. And so, you know, the number difference between our 288 and 430 is Keith is giving you the analysis of the rationale of if it were to be a very large volume of users that participated in the first year, that it could go as high as 430. One of the important things to remember here, and it goes to the first part of the meeting here where we talked about that this is not funded by the taxpayers, this is an enterprise fund, is that if you allocate, regardless of whether you allocate 288,000 on the low end or 430 on the higher end, what you're doing is you're giving the town the ability to spend up to that number that you approve, and there is no downside if you picked a big number. In other words, if we don't spend the money because we don't have the users in the contract are gonna determine the money. But the problem is if you don't approve a number that's high enough for the anticipated operations of the new water system in 2021, there's going to be legal ramifications that we're going to be on the phone with DRA, and we're going to possibly be filing something in Superior Court to go back and have a special town meeting to ask for additional approval from the legislative body because the number that is proposed is not high enough. So my suggestion and recommendation, and along with Underwood, is to approve the higher number so that if we had a great success of high number of users, we've got the funding in place. If you just for some reason philosophically approve a smaller number, which again has nothing to do with taxes, it's just giving the authority to the operation to spend up to. Now you got to remember, the more that we spend up to, with the more revenue we got coming in on the other side. The revenue, in theory, is if we had a higher participation at that 430,000 and we needed all that money, we're going to have a very high amount of revenue that's going to generate a greater amount of surplus than if we have a smaller level of participation. That was the chart that Keith showed you, that as you get more users, the surplus grows.
Right. Okay.
So I'm going to stop there and let other people jump in to pick up where I just left off.
And before you do, Mark, thank you. I also want to point out that when we met with you in January, and I think in July, this is essentially the same target budget we were using for 80,000 gallons a day at the time. So it's not a new number in total. It's just now that you have line items that you're looking at.
So
I
could,
think those prior line items, prior budget did not really look at all of the miscellaneous fees at the same time. We were trying to establish the user rate for consumption. And I think there was a fire service budget as well. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, Madam Chairman. Were you going to say something?
yeah, I'm sorry. I guess what I'm looking at is unanticipated water line breaks and hydrant and pump repairs. Those are, in my opinion, and I don't understand anything about this, but should we be looking at 45 grand for those kind of repairs the first year in our system? I don't understand why those numbers are so huge, nor do I understand why the purchase for meters and blackflow preventers was cut in half. It would make sense. What we got from our finance director sort of makes a lot more sense to me, and I understand why you're trying to add that money into the budget, and I understand the whole concept of it. I guess I was just taken aback at some of these numbers that do not appear to be realistic. I don't know. Talk to me.
Yeah, the red are designed, the red lines and budget lines that we added are designed to be added to Greg's budget. They're not, and if there's nothing in line next to his, we're still maintaining his budget. So we didn't delete or deduct anything that Greg had. It was just an added thing. One of the things about this is you have no experience going into this department as to what your budget will be for a potable system. You're going to be turning a fire suppression system into a potable system, and we are changing the dynamics of the system, the pressures of the system. Sometimes those things create unanticipated consequences. On my experience, anytime we've changed a system's operations, we see breaks that we did not expect. We might be better off being prepared for those things, and then subsequent years, as your experience grows as to what this department really needs to run, you reduce it. And but I think it would be our recommendation that you make sure you've got yourself covered, just in the event things don't operate as smoothly as maybe we would hope. Yes, you have a lot of new pipe. You get 3 miles of new pipe, but you get 11 miles of existing system pipe
All right,
too.
okay. All right. The other thing is, there's a line item here that you've included for capital reserves for 20,000. So it was, I guess, my understanding that we were perhaps potentially going to forego that for the first year. Is that still correct, or what?
Yeah, and what you see on that budget is 150,000 for the operator. And so what I think in the comment next to it, it says we think it could be as high as 200,000 based on some of the system operation budgets we've seen for contract operators and similar systems. So what we actually show there is 150,000. We think it could be as high as 200. We note that you probably would not be funding reserves in the first couple years to support that kind of budget. So it's just a matter of how you line it up, but that's what we did on that budget.
All right, so basically the bottom line looks like it's just going to be parsed out with all of those other line items.
Yep.
All right, okay, I got it, thanks.
I got the concern here.
Go ahead,
This is
Julian.
the sheet that's going to go to the budget committee.
Not necessarily.
Well, this is one piece of information here, one piece of information here. It's not clear what is what. And this is, how can you vote on something where it's not,
I believe
it's
this
not
will
really
be,
specified?
this will be redone.
It has to get redone.
Right, this will be redone. There's no doubt in my mind that this will get redone. So we're looking at this budget here to approve this.
Well,
I am sure that Greg will take this and bring those back in line so that it meets.
Yeah, can we confirm that with you, Greg Colby, that if we approve the 431,300, that you will adjust these line items to reflect the accurate additions?
Yes, that is absolutely what
Okay.
will happen.
All righty. Board, do you have any more questions? John, do you have any questions about any of this stuff? I know you can't really see it except for online here, but I'll give anyone else an opportunity to take another look at this.
yeah, it's just
No,
that the number of line items on this.
Wait, John's
Just
answering.
ask John, go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
No, I kind of agree with go to the top number, and we're going to be adjusting a lot as we go along, so we don't want to cut ourselves short.
Okay. All right, thanks. Go ahead, Julian.
There's 17 line items on the presentation sheet. There's 19 line items on the spreadsheet. Does that mean the ones that aren't on the other sheet will stay the same?
No,
No,
There's not a one-on-one for these two sheets.
Right.
those are additive, so
these are added here, Julian. See these? These will be added onto the budget.
look at the last column, that may help.
See here?
See the last column where it's totaling them? So as an example, this 5,000 for the jockey pump operations and $7,000 been added. Over on the right-hand side, it says 12,000. Do you see that on this here? At this column
Up
here,
on
that's the
top.
additive. And those items that do not have an account, I'm sure that Greg will assign a proper account number for those on the bottom of the sheet.
Well, you guys have not steered us wrong yet, and you've done a remarkable job of guiding us through this whole process. So I'm going to suggest that we abide by their expertise and that we consider this budget for $431,300.
Make a
So-
motion that we approve the water budget for $431,300.
Okay. Does anyone have any more discussion or suggestions or questions on this? I know we're going to need to see another draft on this, which I'm sure Greg will provide for us at our next meeting. May I have a second on that motion?
I second a motion.
Okay, thank you, John. Are we ready to vote on this, people, or what do you want to do here? We got to vote on it if we've got a first motion and a second. Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to take a roll call vote. All those in favor?
Ms. Hart?
Aye.
Mr. Italian?
Aye.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that motion carries 500, and I'm going to reiterate again, this is not coming out of taxpayer funding. It's coming out of the Water Enterprise Fund, so if there are funds left over, it goes right back into that Water Enterprise Fund.
When will we see the revised spreadsheet?
Greg Colby?
Yep, I will work on it, get it done tomorrow, and get a clean version out to all of you tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. All right.
You're
so,
welcome. Sorry for the confusion.
No, that's okay. We're trying to look at all these numbers really quick, and it was a little bit different, so, but I do trust you guys because I know you have not steered us wrong yet, so we do have to listen to the experts in the room, and we are certainly not experts in water yet.
Yeah.
So, yes, we will be. Yes, we will be. So are there any other questions or comments for Underwood before we say goodnight to these wonderful gentlemen? No? John, do you have any comments?
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
since we've got Gene here and you know that he gives a monthly update to the board, he has one in your package. I was wondering, Gene, if you just wanted to verbally, go over the update and then answer any questions the board might have, because there has been some, accomplishments that aren't listed in there, such as the purchase of the land for the pump house and the status of the permitting for the pump house and for the pipe work in Atkinson in the permitting.
Okay. Were you going to discuss any of this on your town manager's report?
I was, but Gene's not going to
Okay.
be here for that.
Yeah,
And this
actually,
is
I would
related
like
to the
hear it
water.
Today for the public.
Yeah,
All
I'd be
right.
happy to do a quick overview.
Okay, go ahead, Jean.
Yeah, just a few minutes here. I don't need to get into too much detail, but feel free to ask questions. For starters, this is our second time we've delivered a monthly report, and I welcome any comments or feedback if you feel it's too detailed, not detailed enough, or whatever. But generally, I've structured it to go through the four major contracts and then talk to miscellaneous issues. Contract P1, which are the water mains, has been progressing very well. You probably know that they've been working on Sweet Hill Road lately. They're actually within 1,200 feet at the end of the day today of making the connection to the water main that is at the tank. So basically, we will have water at the top of the hill through the fire suppression system. But nevertheless, that segment of the work is really coming along well, and we expect to be at the top of the hill with that pipeline. The contractor will then be moving off to, I believe, Westville is their next stop. So that's P1. P2, the pump station work has been a major change in the location. As Mark mentioned, the purchase of that property on East Road for the pump station has been complete. We've been struggling to get some answers relative to some wetland permit issues, but we are expecting a 90% design submittal at the end of this week to go to both Mark and to the New Hampshire DES. P3, the tank project is going very well. It's actually getting close to wrapping things up here this fall. The tank is done except for final backfilling around it, which can't be done until that water gets connected. And we bring water up to the tank so we can test it for leaks and whatnot. But the tank is looking great. The contractor did an excellent job, in our opinion. They're working on a valve building, and they'll be buttoning up the site before winter. Excuse me. P4 will be the last of our projects for construction. Those are the building service connections for all the MTBE sites. We are chipping away now at the additional new sites that came through with the state's MTBE testing. They're still going to be doing more of that testing. Some of that was delayed because of the COVID issues, but we understand that they still are left with some properties to test their wells. So the number may grow, but we're at 83 MTBE sites, and that contract P4 will connect them. And if we move ahead with offering, as Keith said before, the ability to put in service connections for non-MTBE sites, they could be incorporated into the P4 contract. And then miscellaneous issues. We have, like I said earlier, been working on getting a RFP finalized for getting cost proposals and making a selection for an operator. I think those are the highlights. Again, it's a very quick rundown. If you want more detail, I'd be happy to do it. But generally speaking, I think the construction is going well.
Okay, great. Any comments, board? This is a great summary. It's very succinct. It's very on point. I love it, especially the colored pictures. They look great. I guess I just have a question as to why they're dragging their feet on the wetland permits. We've been talking about this for a significant amount of time. Do you have any idea why?
Well, there's a complex issue relative to the floodplain, and the floodplain itself is incorrectly mapped on the FEMA map. And it affects how potential mitigation might be handled for the impact of the construction.
All right. So is that going to cause any issues or problems with getting that construction done on a timely basis then?
Well, I think we're definitely going to be into the year 2021 for construction of that. There's, at this point, even though we have the design pretty much close to going out to bid, opening bids around Christmas, Thanksgiving, you might as well expect to be starting in earnest construction in the spring.
All right.
And that still works in well with the overall project budget, project timeframe and the agreement, the regional agreement that was executed. So.
Okay, so you're not anticipating a redesign if there's any issues with the wetlands permit then, right? Hopefully.
I certainly hope not. I think
Okay,
we're
me
on the right
too.
track. We have had numerous discussions with DES, but they've brought in their federal partners on this issue. The wetlands issues are actually technically managed through the Army Corps of Engineers, and we've also had discussions with FEMA.
Gene, will the P3, Sweet Hill, Water Hill, water storage tank, will that be finished before the snow flies? I mean, that.
Yes.
So
yes, I mean, the tank itself is actually done now. It won't be operational though.
Okay.
We can fill it with fire suppression water. In fact, it'll be left over the winter with 4 feet of water in there. The next step is to fill it when that pipeline gets brought in and test it. And then it will be, there's 4 to 6 feet of backfill. It varies a bit around the tank, but that backfill will be placed. And then the tank will be ready for operation. It'll be there before the end of the year.
Will there be any fencing around that to stop kids from climbing up the water tank?
Yes.
I assume there'll be a ladder on the side of the water tank to get to the top?
No, we did not install a ladder to invite people to hop the fence and climb the tank. It's a relatively shallow tank, short tank, I mean, and we would expect a ladder access.
Okay, so a ladder from outside, not attached to the tank itself?
Correct.
Correct, thank you.
All right, okay. Any other questions board might have? Well, thank you both, gentlemen, for your time and all your expertise. I know this has been a long project for all of us, and you've done an outstanding job, and we thank you very much for all your efforts on our behalf.
Well, thank you.
All right, you guys have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks, guys. Good night.
Good night. Okay, so We are on to our final budget wrap-up.
Wow.
Woo-hoo. So I believe the only budget that we have not voted on is our solid waste budget. And I did want to let the board know that I did have a conversation with John Blinn regarding voting some of the budgets that he was not here for. And well, he said he trusted us, which is probably one of his first mistakes to tell us that. But he indicated, but he indicated that he would be happy to revote the final budget once we're all done with all the adjustments and everything else. So I don't want to belabor any more time to do that. But I would like to talk to the board about the solid waste budget. We're still obviously in negotiations, which are not going to be formalized anytime soon. So I'd like to ask the board if they would consider the $771,000 recommendation that Greg Colby made. I looked over the past budgets, and they seems to be a $40,000 increase every year, which is fairly consistent. So if someone could recommend that, we can always make adjustments when and if we finalize a contract. And then the other issue that I would like the board to talk to the board about is the rec budget. I did get an email from Bill Coy from the Rec Commission, and the Rec Commission requested that we increase the director from a 32 to a 40-hour position, which added $7,382 to the rec budget. So I would like to ask for your consideration on that. We do have the water budget that we voted on, so I think if we can wrap up those other two line items on the budget, we can hand this over to the Budget Committee so they have a chance to look at it. So are there any comments or questions or issues that you want to bring up before we put motions on the floor?
Are you comfortable with those numbers for the waste?
You know, it's a dart on the board, literally, and it may be less than that, but we don't know yet, but I'm trusting in,
More
again.
concerned if it's more than that.
I don't think it will be. I really do not. I think we're going to be able to do a lot of fee-for-services regarding the recycling. So that there's probably $120,000 to maybe $170,000 worth of recycling that we may not have to pay for. So I think that number is, if anything, high.
Okay.
But, you know, I do trust Greg's expertise on this. He's outstanding in his budget work, obviously. And so if he thinks that's a reasonable amount of money, I'm okay with that.
So can I ask you one additional thing?
Yeah.
Has that number is still okay even with the cart lease?
Well, that's the other thing I want to talk to you about, because that is more than likely going to drop as well. So all that stuff's going to be talked about with the trash discussion, so.
But we could approve this and we would be comfortable that we would be able to take care of the cart lease with.
I believe we can.
Okay.
And again, this is not in stone, so I just really want to get this over to the Budget Committee so they have some time to work on this.
Okay.
And if we find out later in November or even December that these numbers are going to change, we can always revote a different number.
Okay.
So I guess that's where I'm going, is I really feel under the gun to get this information to the Budget Committee. They can't really wait till November. That's not appropriate for us to drag this out.
Okay,
for them.
I'm okay with it.
All right,
Would you ask
are
the
you
other-
guys okay with it?
Other selectmen.
Or do you want to adjust the number, or what do you think?
Well, one thing is we can adjust that number later anyway, 'cause
Right.
it's still early.
Right.
The second is I'd like to still see it budgeted for recycle, even though we may not go recycle, just in case.
Well, all right,
It's not a
okay.
done deal. It's
Right,
still in
it's,
discussion.
yeah, exactly, it's not a done deal, that's
We
what
might
everybody
find
has to
some new
remember.
numbers, who knows?
Okay, and it's only for next year, too, don't forget.
Right.
It's only for next year. Jay, comments? Good. How about you, John? Do you want to adjust the number, or you want to put a motion on the floor to approve it?
I think we should. I'd like to revisit recycling again.
We will. We're going to talk a lot
not
about it
tonight.
right next. Okay.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we approve solid waste collection budget for $771,000.
I'll second that.
Okay, may I have a roll call on that, please?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Abstain.
Okay, so that motion carries 401. So the next budget item that we need to discuss is the rec budget. And again, Mr. Coy indicated that they wanted to move that position from a 32-hour to a 40-hour position. The difference in salary is $7,382. It would move the first line up, the director's salary, to $39,520. And so the bottom line budget would be increased to $210,695. So, gentlemen, what say ye?
Make a motion to increase the rec budget for $210,900.
695.
$695.
Okay. May I have a second on that?
Second that.
Okay. Is there discussion on it? John, did you have something to say or comment?
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, okay. So roll call, Julian?
Well, I just say, I don't know why we're doing it, so I don't know what the reasoning is, but, okay.
Well, I think we had a full-time rec director in the past, and I think Jen's done a huge amount of work in marketing the rec department. She's been able to get a whole bunch of revenue by renting out our park to the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, and a bunch of different baseball and softball teams. So she's going gung-ho, and she's doing a lot of programs that are very creative, especially within this COVID restriction. So I think maybe that money may be very well spent, personally. But anyway, is there any more comment on that? Nope. Okay, roll call.
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes.
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion carries 500. So, Mr. Greg Colby, I'm going to ask you for some bottom line numbers tomorrow, but it looks like what I have to date with all of those approvals is we have $9,397,734 for the operating budget. We have $431,300 for the water and $599,174 for the library. And it looks like it's a grand total of $10,428,208. So if you can just double check all those numbers and confirm that with me sometime tomorrow or the next day. If we are confirmed with that, could I ask you to kindly send this budget to the chair of the budget committee as our approved budget?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, now
Thank
this-
you so much. Go ahead, Julian.
Budget is with the large fire department increase.
It is with the fire department increase, so
Are we not gonna go to a warrant article to decide, let the voters decide whether they wanna go with it?
I believe that's going to be the budget committee's decision to make. If they feel that that should not be in the budget and they reduce that amount, then we will put it to warrant. Because don't forget, this whole board voted 500 to put it in there.
We have the warrant
Well,
already
we
written.
voted 500 that we believe that it should happen, but we didn't make a decision on whether it should or shouldn't go to warrant. That's always been a Board of Selectmen decision. Warrant articles are a Board of Selectmen decision.
Yes. Well, the budget committee might approve that, and then we won't need a warrant.
Well, I doesn't mean we don't want it to go to warrant anyway.
Well, we didn't vote that way, Julian.
We
That's the,
didn't vote for warrant or not warrant at all. We voted for
No.
a budget.
that's
Right.
right.
We said we approve, we agree with this budget, and it was
Right.
conditional that, it was conditional. If you go back and look at the video, there was nothing that said we were gonna go without warrant.
I believe what we said was
I
if the
personally will
budget
vote for it,
committee,
But it doesn't mean the rest of the public will.
I believe what we discussed, because I did indicate that that had been precedent, but we voted to include it in the budget. And so I did respond that if the budget committee could say, yep, that's okay, and then we have no need of a warrant. If they decide they would like to remove it and put it to warrant, that is for our consideration to do.
There's
Not
no need
my
for,
recollection.
there's no need for a warrant unless
Unless the budget committee says no.
committee does not approve that budget.
And they might likely not approve it, and so then it would go to a warrant article. And then the taxpayers can vote, and they may vote that down, absolutely. Are you good with that?
I have no choice.
Well, you definitely have a vote.
I don't agree with it, but I have no choice.
You voted yes for it,
No,
so.
I did not vote yes to not go to warrant article. I voted yes that I approved the budget, and I agreed with the concept. I did not vote yes that I would not go to warrant.
We didn't put that motion on the floor, that's why you didn't vote for it. The motion on the
You
floor,
implied-
the motion on the floor was for, a-
Chairman, that we could do it at a later time.
we can, we
And
still
What
can.
you're saying now, it's, oh, we didn't decide to do that, so it's not a fact anymore.
No, that's not what I'm saying, Julian. We voted, we
Exactly what
put a
you
motion
said.
on the floor
Nothing
to
more
vote
say.
for
It's
this
exactly
budget.
what you said.
All right, I'm not gonna debate
not
this
either.
with you. Okay, so we're gonna move on. All right, so our last discussion is our trash discussion. I think everybody's waiting
Betsy?
for that. Sir,
Could you just rattle through those numbers one more time?
sure.
A little bit slower.
I couldn't write fast enough.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so the operating budget total is $9,397,734.
Yeah,
The water budget is $431,300. Library is $599,174. And so the grand total with the operating budget, the water budget, and the library budget comes out to $10,428,208. I hope. I don't know. I might have added it up wrong, but Greg will correct me if I did.
I'm $30 off, but we can go over it tomorrow.
All right. See, I knew I would be off. Okay, sorry.
All right, I have a question. When this goes to warrant article this year, which is different,
When what goes to warrant?
when it goes to the budget, to vote on the budget.
The operating
At
budget?
town
Okay.
meeting,
Yes.
will the water budget be separately
Yes.
voted then? Because then it's not
Yes.
really a combined 10 million.
That's correct.
Okay,
It will be
make that
separate.
clear.
It will be separate. Okay. All right, so where am I here? Okay, so now we're going to talk about the trash discussion. Okay, a few days ago, I sent you all an email kind of summarizing where I have been. Last week, the representatives from Casella met with myself and the town council to try to iron out a pro forma statement. Before we get into that, I think the first thing that we need to do is place a formal vote to decide the vendor of choice, because don't forget, we have Waste Management and we also have Casella on board here. I did a spreadsheet for you guys indicating the cost, and I believe it came within dollars of each other with Waste Management versus Casella. So the only other indication were the references. And Casella really had Waste Management beat in level of service and adherence to their contractual obligations. So in my personal opinion, I think we should take a formal vote to continue negotiations with Casella and leave him as the vendor of choice. So I'll open the floor for discussion. Any discussion?
I'll make a motion that we accept Casella as the final candidate to negotiate the waste management contract with.
Okay, so Casella is the final contract negotiator?
That's my motion.
Okay, may I have a second on that motion?
I second the motion.
Thank you, John. Okay, if we have no further discussion on this, may I take a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Hart?
Yes?
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
No.
Mr. Blinn? Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, so motion carries 4-1-0. So I learned a lot about trash that I didn't really want to know, but I will tell you that in all cases, when you use automated services, the contractors will only pick up one cart for recycling and one cart for trash, which was news to me. So when I went into negotiations, I asked Casella if they would drop their annual increase from 4.5%. They responded back with that they would decrease it to 4%, but they raised the base rate for the trash because they were under the assumption we were going to do both trash and recycling. So it kind of was basically a wash. So I responded back to them that I would love to have them see their way clear to dropping another 0.5%. So we're looking at a 3.5% increase, kind of a sweet spot between what they offered and what Atkinson has. And I'm still waiting for them to come back to me. And so when they make that decision, I will come back to you guys to see if you want to move forward or if you want to throw it out and do a new RFP. all right? So that's that piece of it. But the most important piece that we need to discuss is we discussed recycling. So I have some great news for, I think, almost everybody in town. The first piece of good news is that we can rent a 10-yard dumpster and place it at the landfill, and I think it's about $259 a month to rent, and that is locked, and it can be used for recycling. So if we place it there and offer recycling every Wednesday and Saturday at the same time that the landfill is open, that gives people that want to recycle a great opportunity for them to bring that down there, and it will be locked up at the end of the Wednesday and Saturday night, so nobody can throw any nasty stuff in there. And Casella will haul it away. I think they were saying they could do it once a week, but I think maybe once every other week or once a month. But anyway, that's the only charge they will charge us for. They're not going to charge us tipping fees for any recycling. So that's a great deal. So I think that's something that we should, that's a done deal, a no-brainer. We should definitely consider that. The other good news is they have a transfer station in Raymond. And if we do vote for Casella as our vendor of choice, we would be allowed to use the transfer station for bulk goods and white goods. White goods are usually appliances, and bulk goods are other things like sofas and mattresses. They have a list of what's acceptable there, and you also have to pay a small fee, which is a sticker system, right, which you would purchase at the town hall. Now, the great news about that is that the town gets to decide how much the stickers cost, and the town gets that money. So that's a little bit more of an offset to our trash as well. So for people who do not have trucks or any wherewithal to go to the transfer station, we can arrange for monthly or quarterly bulk pickups with the town. And so that is, there's an hourly fee for the truck, and there's a tipping fee. And again, the people would have to go to town hall, get a sticker for each item that they wanted to have them picked up. And then Casella would create a route for them so that they could do it. And I believe I put in your packages an example of Atkinson's quarterly cost. And you guys can take a look at it there. So that's how the ticket is that they divided up. They did tell me that Atkinson dropped the fourth quarter pickup because there wasn't really enough to justify the fees for it. So we can look at something like that. Now, the piece de resistance is for people who cannot, have sports cars like me and can't be recycling stuff in their cars. There is what we call a subscription service. So the 127 people that did that poll, I'm going to ask them to put their pocketbooks where their principals are, and I'm going to ask them to sign up for this subscription service. Casella does not provide it, but they do have subcontractors that they would be willing to reach out to. The thing that I don't know is there has to be a minimum amount of people willing to do this, or else it's not financially feasible for them to do it. And the other thing that I do know, it's $115 per year to rent the recycling dumpster. The only thing I don't know is how often they would pick it up. I'm guessing every other week like we do now.
Container.
The container, yes.
Container and
Yeah.
dumpster,
Yeah.
not like a
Yeah.
huge
I'm sorry,
dumpster.
you're right, a container. So I don't know how often they would pick it up, and I don't know if the town would be charged tipping fees for that, but, I'm still looking at all of these things. So I think we've done a really good job of at least trying to answer and address people's concerns. But basically, we're looking at this as a fee for service. I personally, we are here to carry out the prudential interests of the town, and I cannot see paying hundreds of thousands of dollars every year for a service that is misused or not used enough to justify that cost. So that's just my opinion, but I think we can work it out for other people who do want to recycle. And I'll probably do that myself, because I think everybody on this board probably can afford to do that. But again, we need to think of other people besides ourselves that are in good financial condition. We need to think about, our retired people in the community that are on fixed incomes. We need to think of single parents and people who've been out of work with COVID. And that's what we need to think about everybody, not just our own personal situation. So if you guys don't have any questions on that, the other thing I need to talk to you about is the cart purchase. But go ahead, Jay.
So a couple questions. So I know we can figure out the logistics of it, but like if we put up that dumpster. I was looking at the landfill, and we'd have to do some site work up there probably to have an area where people can turn around and have those dumpsters available or dumpster available for them. The other
Okay.
thing too is that, and, you know, are we just gonna open it up and let people throw willy-nilly, or are we gonna have someone there that can keep an eye on it to make sure that what they're throwing in is recyclable, and it falls within those guidelines. The other thing is, you know, if the landfill isn't a good area up there, because if you're thinking of putting it out where people bring all their brush, can you fit 2 cars going in and out through there? I haven't really been out there to
Yeah,
put
I
brush
haven't
out
either.
there,
That's
but,
going to be one of my next missions.
know,
I'm
and-
sure, okay, go ahead.
But with the, you know, with the new highway garage, it might be a little more feasible to maybe place them over there, fenced in. And that way you can open it up there. You're right at the highway garage. It's right centrally located in town. That might be an option too.
And
But I know that we can figure all that out afterwards, but those
yeah.
are just things that came up.
But those are things that we should write down and be able to
Right.
work out for discussion. But I guess the big picture is that, yes, we can rent a 10-yard dumpster for recycling that's not going to cost the town more than $3,000 a year. That's great
You
news.
did have some discussions with Mr. Gallington.
I did initially speak just casually with Dan and asked him and our town manager if we could put a dumpster at the landfill. Now, that does, I know the only reason I said there was because every Wednesday and Saturday, there are 2 people there to monitor things. And I mean, I don't expect Dan to be a trash contractor,
Right.
but at least he can eyeball stuff and, you know, and just mention, hey, if you didn't rinse stuff out, it's not going to fly. You know, or if you've got plastic bags, or if you've got this, and yes, we do need to do a lot of education, and, you know, we did try, but I know there's better ways to do it, and I was a miserable failure at it, so I am not the person to do that. We've got to maybe get some of our citizens, you know, who are really sincere, and, you know, a couple of ladies emailed me, and I think they would love to do something like this, but we have to kind of formalize everything first. But those are definitely things up for discussion, but it's not like we're slamming the door on recycling. We have a number of alternatives, but, you know, we have to, you know, the citizens have to participate too, and like I said, they have to put their pocketbook where their principles are, and that's basically what it comes down to. So, do you have? Yeah.
Just one more thing. So the other thing with if we had a dumpster somewhere, and I'm sure, I don't know if any of you have read about NRAA or NRRA.
Yes.
And basically it's kind of like RPC, Rockingham. You pay a fee, and they
Yes.
help you come up with the best solutions for what you're going to do. And I don't know if maybe in the future this is an option, but joining
Yeah.
that. And then one of the things they talk about is splitting up and being able, having the town being able to profit from those recyclable materials. So you'd have separated dumpsters for certain
Yes.
types of things.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of getting into the transfer type station area, but
Yeah.
it's just another option to think
It
about.
is.
But
And down the road, it might be an excellent option. I think we will go full circle with that someday. And Lori Millette, I think, gave the board that website for us to look at, because she's always looking at that stuff. So that's absolutely a great area for them to assist us with training and education. And if we do choose Casella, they are really, really good at that. And so we will be asking them to help us do some outreach and some training. Because I know everybody's heart is in the right place. I know we all want to steward the environment, but I think a lot of people don't understand. I have a next door neighbor that rinses out all her plastic bottles and everything, but she puts it in a giant plastic see-through bag. And it's like, that bag is not going to go into recycling. And after all that work, you know, it's going to go into the trash. So I know there's a lot of people that think they're doing the right thing, and they really kind of aren't in the long run. So education absolutely is critical, and it's you know, not going to happen overnight. It needs to be repeated over and over and over. So hopefully with Casella, if they are our vendor of choice, and with other, you know, websites and stuff, we can really do that. So maybe in 2022, we can go back to full-time recycling and make it a worthwhile venture, not only for the town, but for the vendors too, because they're losing their shirts on this. That's why they're charging us back charges every month on this stuff.
So might we think, we don't have to do it tonight, might we think about creating a recycle committee and then inviting people to join that committee?
I'm going to email the people that emailed me about their
Okay.
concerns and say, if you guys
But if
want
we
to
make
form a
something,
citizens
one thing, if we made something
committee-
formal.
Yeah.
And then we can invite them to be able to come to help us guide
Yes, because we
town
can't do it
through
by
this
ourselves.
process.
Yep.
And part of that will be education, but part of it may be other areas as well.
Yep, and don't forget, we have 8 months to put all this stuff together too,
Yep.
so that's the best part.
Yep.
So, do you guys want to talk about the cart
Yes.
system? Okay, so, because I found out that they are only allowing 1 cart for trash and 1 cart for recycling, that threw all the price quotes right out the window. So I'm going to suggest to you, and I have not talked to either vendor yet because I wanted to get your thoughts on it first, obviously. My thinking is that we lease 1 96-gallon cart. They'll pick that, and that looks like that's about, a little bit more than 2 40 gallons, which is what everybody's putting out now for trash. And then we lease that with a 5-year lease. And then if you guys decide you want to go to recycling, you do the same thing over again with
A smaller barrel.
with a larger barrel or whatever it is that you guys want in 2022. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that I went through, let me show you what I went through, all of the assessing documents, woo-hoo, all 88 pages of it, and I think we came out to about 3,120 families in town, and that does not count dumpster locations. So Casella did mention that they would,
How many families?
3120 households
Right,
that
right.
pick up trash, that are residential trash. And that does not count like condo associations that have dumpsters. So what, there's a certain amount of trash pickup that they will allow beyond the 3120, and after that, they will start charging us for it, which makes sense. So my thought was to order some extra barrels, and if some, families have like 6 or 8 members of the family, they may need another trash barrel. So it would be a first come, first serve, and they would pay a nominal fee, what the cost was to buy the trash barrel, and then when those run out, then they're out. So I would like you guys to think about that and tell me if that's the way you want me to structure it, how many extra barrels you'd like me to buy.
So the barrels will be the property of the town.
It will be the property of the town, yes.
So I think that whatever your excess is, yes, one source of that is to sell those to people who need more. But in addition to that, I think we need to reserve parts. If we have a damaged barrel, a barrel breaks or whatever, breaks the wheel, we need to be able to provide
Okay, I can look into that because I didn't think of that.
and it doesn't need to be a really large amount, but we need to have some set aside for
right.
possible repair.
All right, okay. So are you guys comfortable with that line of thinking?
Well, there's a flaw in that a little bit. Just
Okay.
buying a trash barrel, you're now adding to the tonnage every week. It's not continuous. You could buy that extra barrel, have it for the next 10 years, consider if we kept with the same contract and everything for the next 10 years, and it's not accounting for the extra weight or
Oh,
the
are you
tonnage you're
talking-
adding to the trash every week.
Are you talking about a person buying a second barrel?
Right.
Is that- Oh, okay, I wasn't clear what you were saying.
That becomes a one-time cost. It doesn't perpetuate. So
Right, so if they were delivering, we're saying if they were actually throwing away more stuff than the normal person.
Right.
Then we're still going to pay for that.
every single week.
Right.
For how many decades or whatever it could potentially come out to be. So that's not really a viable solution, and then you're only limiting to the first come, first serve. And it really doesn't solve the issue of how much trash is going out in the condominiums and apartments and things like that.
Okay,
It doesn't
so,
address that.
so 2 questions, and I do have answers for you. The condominium associations already have yardages of dumpsters, and that's been already figured into the contract. with the residents, what I did was when I added the numbers up for you guys, I added trash and recycling together. So we average about 4,200 tons of trash and recycling over the last several years. It may be a little bit high, but that's about what we have looked at. So people aren't going to probably go higher than that 4,200, and that would be a tipping fee. So, I mean, people that do have 6 people, they may not be able to do 196 trash barrel, and that's really not fair. Like, and you're right, because you know what? I would take a month to fill that up because my trash is like this big. So you're absolutely right on that. So,
Yeah, it kind of balances,
it
probably
does
going to balance
sort
out
of.
the same
It
way.
does sort of,
You know, some
yeah.
people know no way in the world will they ever fill that barrel. That
Right,
it'll be
right.
filled
There's
on
a
the
lot of
bottom.
How
couples.
do they determine the size of the dumpster for a condominium depending on units? Is it based so many cubic yards per, how many units there are?
Yes,
Or
and
is it just-
actually, and I do have that information. I can give it to you after our meeting.
Okay.
It gives you dumpster locations, it gives you yardage size, and it gives you how often they're picked up, and I can give you that information. And I believe that's still consistent right now. I don't think that's changed, so the Casella is using that as their basis for pricing.
Yeah, so I'm just, what the question is let's say if there's 20 units, are they getting equivalent of 20 96-gallon barrels? Or are they getting more?
Probably less.
Probably a little
I would
less, yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Go
Would
ahead,
know.
Jay.
So if we look at the 3,100 residents or families, what's an estimated cost we're looking at to buy 96-gallon barrels?
Well, the less you buy and the different size you buy always affects it. I'm looking at, the price
So
quotes
if you
were,
said 96 gallons and we just did one of those, what is the price on that if we just did? I know we probably need to buy more if we go this route, but what's 3,100?
well, again, I don't have price quotes because when I quoted 265s and then I quoted a 65 and a 96 because we were going to do one of each, and I've gone back and forth with these guys. So the prices per barrel changed. The only thing that didn't change really was the shipping fee, the GPS service. One of them said they would put a logo that says Town of Plaistow on it, so there's another issue. I did ask them, I said, if we forget about the GPS system, because it was like $6,000, he goes, we don't do that, it's automatically built in. So they're built into those, so we can't get away from that. But I'm guessing, the price quotes that I got ranged in the, from 298,000 to 320,000.
280 to 300?
To 320. So I'm thinking that if we're cutting the number of barrels in half, I'm guessing we'll be able to shave at least $100,000 off of that. But I can't tell you that until you guys tell me firmly, okay, this is it, this is the bottom line, because I don't want to keep jerking these guys around anymore.
But you're not saying the GPS system, you just mean the ID system.
Well, yeah.
It's totally,
Yeah.
that's different.
Yeah, and they won't separate that out. It's included in there, and they're not going to, because I thought I could sleaze away by saying, okay, if it says Town of Plaistow, they wouldn't do anything, but
Yeah, but I'm just
I
saying.
tried everything. I really did, guys, but they weren't biting.
Because all you gotta do is go down to Home Depot and buy
Exactly.
the same kind of barrel.
I
And get
know.
the same color.
I
And
know.
you can slip them right in.
I know, exactly.
They don't have the ID.
I know, exactly. So, go ahead, Jay.
And maybe this is more down the road, but who manages the barrels? So once we get them and they're distributed, obviously, is the company we buy them from going to maintain them or handle them, or are we going to need someone in town to maintain that and fix and replace them as needed?
I believe it's town. They did tell me that if you wished, you could purchase a software system where you could relocate the barrels to specific units. I don't think we necessarily need to do that. I think we just need to keep a list of, the ID number and where it's going. But as far as maintaining and repairing and that type of thing, I don't believe the company's going to do that. I think that's going to be on our dime.
And do you know what kind of hours we're looking at a year for 20 hours, an hour, 10 hours, 5 hours, an hour
For
and a
what?
half?
The
I don't know, just someone's going to have to keep track of this stuff, right? And
Not once it's initially
if it's
distributed.
broken, if there's, something happens where we need to repair something or replace a barrel completely,
Right.
is it
So
someone at the front office? Is it
Pot-
someone in the highway, or?
Part of this is the fact that the barrels last 20 to 25 years. So they are very, very sturdy.
Right, I understand
We're not going to
that.
expect, a major thing getting a split or whatever, but very likely a wheel might come off or something to that effect. So I think that as well as us getting a number of barrels that people might want to purchase, we would have enough or, not assembled, so that if it was a matter of putting on a new wheel, we could charge a nominal repair fee and possibly have the highway department repair that.
I
Because
guess-
we probably would store them there too.
Yeah, where I'm going is, it just seems like there's gonna be an additional cost somewhere. Once we buy them and they're ours,
Yeah.
we have to take care of them, so is that gonna?
I can't tell you what that costs.
No,
will
I
be.
know, I'm just saying, this is,
Yep,
it's our property and we're gonna have to maintain it,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, the other thing too is that you guys can make a decision as to whether you want to lease the carts through the vendor, and you're just going to pay for that every 5 years, but that's 300 grand every 5 years. So in my mind, that's not a cost-effective solution to have somebody possibly repair stuff. I'm thinking that you're not going to find that there's going to be as many repairs as you believe there will be, because don't forget, this is an automated service, and they're not going to be throwing the trash cans in the road or on your driveway or wherever, because that's where most of the damage is done, is by humans throwing stuff around. It's going to be placed on the ground by a machine, so.
Well, we do have a wind problem in town, so
We
everyone's
do.
barrels ends up in the middle
I
of the
know,
road.
I know.
I'm kidding, but.
I can't predict
I know.
everything, but, it's good things to think about, and I can certainly ask some of those questions, but I
And I'm
need
with
some
you. I don't
guidance
think
from
there's going to
you.
be a lot of costs associated with that. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
think, is there going to be a maintenance that we need to consider? That's all.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm guessing, and I'm going to go on record for that, but there probably will not be much maintenance for the first couple of years. And if somebody breaks a wheel, there's no reason why you couldn't just give them a brand-new, trash barrel and take the other one back and rape it for parts, yeah.
When you speak with,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
yeah,
I think maybe what Jay was saying, when those repairs need to be done, the public will have to know or have a number to call to
Yeah, and we
find
haven't
out
just-
who's gonna do that.
yep, and it's more than likely, since the town owns it, it more than likely is going to be the town that's going to repair it or replace it.
So we'll need to give them, come up with a number of somebody in town, maybe the maintenance department or the DPW,
Yeah, we
to
can
take
figure
care of
it
the
out.
issue.
Right.
Yep.
So what else are you going to say, Jay?
Just one more question that popped up. When you talk to Casella, can you ask them if we were to lease them, after the contract is set to expire, and if we decide to stay with them, are they going to charge us again?
Okay,
Even
all
though
right.
we already have all the barrels out here?
Okay, that's a great question. Yep.
Because
Okay, I can do that.
if they're not going to charge us $300,000 after 5 years, it might,
That's a great deal.
Make it a little
Yeah,
more
maybe we should lease it from them.
viable.
Do we, in leasing the barrel from another supplier, at the end of the 5 years, we purchase we purchase all the barrels for $1 or something to that effect?
That's correct with the,
Right.
with the barrel contractors, right? It's a
Right,
lease
so-
to own,
So we
right?
would have to look at that and then
Right.
compare it to
Yep, I
what
will
Jay is
ask.
suggesting. The only concern I
Okay.
have in terms of leasing it from the vendor is if we decide not to go with them again, we
Yeah,
start the whole
that's-
process.
And that-
Obviously,
yes,
that's the only
yes.
downside, but.
And that's way down the road. None of you might be on this
Something
board
that
then.
lasts 20 years, I hate to buy that twice. I
or-
would like to
yeah.
get the
Yeah.
full economic life of that barrel.
Maybe they have an option too, that we can purchase them.
All right, I can ask. I can
the good
certainly
thing-
ask.
the
I
good
can certainly
thing-
ask. Okay.
Hopefully, all of us will be off the board.
Be somebody
25
else's
years.
decision, I know. So basically, what I'm hearing from you guys is, are you comfortable with going with a price quote of 196-gallon container? How many extras do you want? Do you want 30 extras to do 3150? How many extras would you like me to ask them to quote? Or would you like 50 more? What would you like? Anybody? Somebody?
I'm not
What's the
sure.
turnaround time for getting the barrels?
Well, since we're ordering them really early, I have told both vendors that they need to have them delivered sometime between May and June of 2021. So they can take their time assembling them and delivering them. They just need a staging area for it. And I believe the old garage is where we were going to do that. Did that answer your question?
Well, yes, but if we say, okay, let's order 25 extra, then we find out we need 10 more, how long is it gonna take to get the extra 10?
That I couldn't tell you, and I don't think they do it by those small amounts of increments, and that's why I'm saying we need to order enough so that we have, a good supply of extra here just in case. So,
You're gonna need some when someone builds a new building.
right, but there may be some families that have like 10 kids or something, so they may want 2 barrels, and we don't know that yet.
I thought it was gonna be just 1 barrel per family, so some families can pay extra to have multiple barrels.
Yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And don't forget, new families are going to be moving into town. We have a lot of developments coming in, a lot of developers, building single-family homes. So, I'm hoping that down the road, all these barrels will be used up. But I just need some guidance from you guys on how many extra I need to bid for.
So if we, a very, very high number would be 10%. 10% would be 312 barrels. 5% is 156 barrels. I'm not sure if we wanted to go much lower than that. It's how comfortable are we that, one, the barrels will be needed for people to buy them, or that they'll be needed for replacements.
Right.
And when we definitely need to purchase these ahead of time.
Right.
We definitely need
Yeah.
to purchase these ahead
Yeah.
of time.
What's the lead time? When do we need an answer for this?
Can I finish one?
Oh, sorry, Greg.
Yeah, so my concern is that let's not purchase a very, very small amount just to get by. There are developments going into Plaistow, which we will now need to put new barrels to. So I would be much more comfortable with, a 5% or 4% of that
many?
number.
So what are you looking at?
So-
3,300?
So 156 barrels would be 5%. You were initially talking about 20 or 30 or 40?
Yeah.
So just under 3,300.
30, is it 3120 was the number?
What, yeah, yep. So you're looking at 150 more? So, all right, so you're looking at 3,270, you want to do 3,300? We're going to have a lot of barrels left over.
So 4% would be 124 barrels, so 124 and 31, 20, 4, 2, I don't know, 3,250?
I don't know, what do you
mean-
think?
Over a period of years, even just 5 years, we are going to have developments come into Plaistow.
Right,
There's one that we
it's
just
built
saw at
up
the
right
planning
now,
board.
that's right, yeah.
So I don't think this would be a bad thing, and we don't know yet. When do we have to put the order in? That's
Okay,
another
so the
question.
issue is, now the other issue is that this is the third quote these poor guys have given me, and they're really not happy with this crazy woman right now. So I want to make this done. It's a 30-day quote. The quotes are geared because the trucking fees are going to go up next year.
Yeah.
And so are the plastic fees.
Yep.
So I was trying to get this in before the end of the year so we could potentially pay the first year's lease payment with some of the budget surplus that we have right now. So that'll help you guys out too. So I would really love to have this decision made by December 1st so I can tell these guys, okay, this is in stone, we're going to sign it, and we'll pay you, the 1 year's lease in December, and then they have 6 months to fabricate it and deliver it. Because the quotes that they gave me right now, I got to throw them out. They're not what I asked for, unfortunately.
If we get, 20 or 30 people want another barrel, that's significant. If we only get 5 people to buy a barrel, then we're going to have a lot of excess barrels.
Right.
I have no idea what kind of what kind of demand it would be, or whether or not, do we know what Atkinson did, for example?
No? Well, they had one of each, so it,
And if you drive through Atkinson, you'll see a number of places with 2 barrels.
yes, yes, and
Right.
not that many, though,
Are
but I
they-
think their
Are they
population
the
is
96 or are they the 65?
65.
The 65, so they're 2 65s.
Yeah. Did you have another comment, Jay, or?
No, I was
No,
just.
oh, all right, you're just playing with your pen, okay.
So they're basically giving their residents 1 barrel for trash
And one for recycling.
recycle.
And all the companies are, and I did not realize that, but when they quoted these prices for base fees and recycling fees,
Yeah.
if there was an automated system, it was with that premise. And what Casella explained to me is they literally time this by the second. And so even though you're having 2 barrels out there, it takes twice as long for the automated arm to go up and down, which lengthens their route and causes all kinds of havoc with their finances, apparently.
So here's the next question. So if we buy extra barrels, are they going to be able to be used? If a resident buys an extra barrel and puts 2
That's
of
up to
them
the
out there,
resident. That's
is
up to
only
the
one of them going
resident.
to get picked up?
No, it's up to, I think they will do up to like a 10% increase, so it is a range. So I told him there's 3120 households.
Okay.
So I believe they'll pick up to 3150 before they start charging the town for extra barrels.
Okay.
So that's why I was thinking, well, maybe we need to, tighten that up to maybe 50 barrels instead of 100. Because the whole idea is for people to reuse, recycle, crush things, do things the right way, and we need to guide them into that.
So let's just have this, have this discussion now before we go up. Why are we going with 96 if Atkinson is only going with 165?
Because they also have a recycling barrel, which is picked up every other week.
But that's recyclable.
They
That's
told
recyclable.
me they will only pick up 1 barrel
I understand.
every week.
I
So if
understand.
you're trying to combine trash and recycling into a 65-gallon barrel, I don't think you're going to do it, because I'm looking at myself. I have 1 65-gallon container every week of recycling. My trash is this big,
Yeah.
but it's a two-family house, 2 individual household.
Right.
So I have to look at, well, what about people that have 4 or 5, or like, Jay's family, they have 4 people in their household. Is a 96-gallon, is a 64 going to be sufficient? I don't think so.
But Atkinson
I put
decided
out
that.
1 barrel of trash every week, and then the rest is all recycling.
So if
we
you were to
recycle everything.
So, yeah, we do. We do too, and I don't disagree with any of the people that are upset and complaining, because I'm probably going to do the subscription service too. It should be exactly the opposite. It should be 25% trash and 75% recycling, from what I can see, from what
Right.
I'm doing.
Exactly.
But what I'm asking you, Jay, is if you took out recycling and you had to throw it in your trash barrel, would a 96-gallon barrel be enough for you once a week?
No, because sometimes I'll put out 2 barrels of trash, and I'm always putting out 2 barrels of recycling.
Of recycling, yeah, I'm
2
always
barrels of
doing that
recycling.
too, yeah. So,
So I'm looking at, I'd probably need a 96,
that's what I'm thinking. It's exactly
Yeah.
what I'm
if not more.
There's some differences. You do recycle, you don't crush your bottles, you don't crush your cans, you don't that, because it won't take them.
yeah,
But if you're
Good point.
recycling and you know you have to fit,
yeah.
you crush your cans.
Yeah.
Like we do with the lines. We crush the cans that are going into metal.
Mm-hmm.
We don't keep them as the big cans, just,
Yep,
And they
that's a good
fit.
point, good point.
but, so
So
you're
I-
gonna handle your trash differently.
So I guess if you guys don't want to make a decision on this tonight, that's good, but our next meeting is November 9th, and we need to make a decision on this by then, because I can't keep these guys waiting, and we have to make some kind of a decision. So think about what you want to do. I gave you all the parameters, so let me know what you want. Yeah,
I'd just like to know those 2 questions.
from Casella, that if we can purchase them
After
after
the
we
5
lease them.
years, or if they charge us more if we
I will ask
renew
them
our
that.
contract.
I will definitely ask them that. I think we've belabored this well beyond the point of insanity. So if Mark and Greg are still there, I bet you they both went home. Can we have the town manager's report, Mark, if you're still there? And he's probably not.
Oh, no snoring.
You are. God bless you, my son, for putting up with our nonsense for all of this time.
Already finished 2 years.
Oh, my God, I'm sorry.
So on my manager's report, which I will put into writing tomorrow, you already have the monthly water project update. We've already worked on the water budget. The Public Works Garage for elections is in process. The excavation has been done. The removal of the piles of material has been completed. The paving's been completed. The footbridge is installed and it's being finished. The fan is in the process of being installed. The pop-up tents and the 6-foot cables have been ordered. The park project has finished essentially the first phase, which is the field and drainage and the access road. Bollards were installed by the pavilion to prevent vehicles that are pulling in too close to the pavilion with not hitting the roof. And bollards were also put in next to the septic system vent pipe. There were 2 change orders that was just shy of $8,000 that I will come back to the board to ask you from which fund you want to pay for that. It could be the recreation or it could be the contingency. There was, if you remember at the beginning of the project, essentially the first day when they started to put in the driveway to get in to the field for the heavy equipment, they ran into the septic system pipes that were there that weren't supposed to be there, and they were already broken underground. So there was a fix there, and there was also an electrical line that was interrupted. So I'll follow up on another night with that. Colley's Way is newly paved and in the process of going through the checklist to be accepted as a town road. But I was approached by Dave Hoyt, and he's asking the town if the town wants to clean out the swales by the lower softball field, just north of the lower parking lot. I went out there and did a site visit with him. It's still wet out by the road there, and he was asking as convenience that before he comes in to finish the edge of the road with the stabilization material, if the town wanted to come in and do that before he actually finishes the stabilization. So I'm in the process of getting a price, and I'd like to do that within the either the recreation or the highway department budget and use funds from this year that we anticipate that we'll have overspend the line items, but we'll be able to balance the budget. But I'd like to consider doing that if the board has a consensus that they want me to do it. We cleaned out the swales that are up by the Hoyt development, and we never cleaned out the swales all the way down to the lower parking lot. So if you have a chance to go by there, you'll notice that the field, the softball field closest to the road, is still very wet by the road. So that's what I'm talking about. If you want to take a ride out there and take a look, you can give me some direction at our next meeting. And again, I have to figure out, if I take it from overspend the rec budget, or we come back to you and ask you to spend money out of the contingency. Greg and I are of the opinion we should do the contingency because we're going to be coming to you to reconcile the previous expenditure out of the contingency and actually put that money back in because we have the funds in the radio project. Just a comment about the full-time rec director. It's a minor point, but if you do increase it to full-time in that budget, I'm not sure if that $7,000 included the New Hampshire retirement system participation. I don't think it did.
No.
And any other contributions, but I just wanted to bring that up to you.
Is that
And that's
something
all I
you
have.
can, Mark, is that something you can help kind of figure out? What the increase
What's
is
that?
going to be?
About 30% more.
Yeah. Well, Greg can get the actual number, so maybe it's about $2,100 to $2,500, something like that. But Greg can figure that out. But I just wanted you to be aware that when you increase the salary line, there's going to be some other things, especially the retirement system. That's all I have.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Do you guys want to go through your reports? John, can I start with you? You haven't really been able to go out and do any meetings, right, John?
No.
Okay, so
I
you're,
got nothing to report.
okay. Jay? No. Greg?
So very briefly, we went to the planning board meeting, and there's Jim Peck is the new leader. He seems to be very, very organized. He seems to be running a good meeting. The facts, I think, are getting out for the projects that they're evaluating. So overall, I think it was a good change. I'm really happy to see Tim is still very actively involved and that Jim is relying on him. I've been doing some more research on the solar project. I have a number of data points now. I would like to create a few slides, and then at some later point, ask to display those to the board, just kind of as an informational. And then from that would be a request or a recommendation to possibly increase the amount of money for this project by asking for another warrant. But I would like to get what I learned and convey that to the selectmen and get their input for as well.
All right. I would recommend you do it with the Energy Committee as well.
Okay.
And Jay's, you're the alternate on the Energy Committee, right? Yeah, okay, all right. Anything else?
That's it?
No? Okay, Julian?
Nothing.
Nothing, okay, and I attended the same meetings as Greg did, so I'm not going to belabor that point. So I believe we do need to go into non-public under J for confidential information. So if the board has no other business to conduct, I'm going to end this public meeting at 8:35. And I'd like to actually have a motion on the floor to enter into non-public.
So I'll make a motion that we enter non-public under RSA 91-A:3 to J, confidential information.
Okay, may I have a second on that?
Second.
Jay seconded.
Jay seconded. Okay, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Talion?
Yes.
Mr. Kishka?
Yes.
Mr. Blinn?
Yes?
Mr. DeRoche?
Yes.
Okay, so we are now leaving our public sector of our meeting and going into non-public, so good night, everyone. And we will be going into non-public at 8:37.